going left for your things. Or have the heart so and go, but start trusting. When your brain takes on stopping, your voice is talking all the time. And you live the feelings you've never been, because you cannot be. If bottom is leaking, affecting my life, cause you are left within, me easy.
Well, there we go. In case you hadn't guessed, he was walking the robots of death, but that's just one tiny entry on his CV, because he's been in everything from Quatermass to The Young Ones by EastEnders and Rock Cliff Babies. It's the one and only Mr. Brian Croucher.
White wine spritzer.
Gentleman's breakfast. Well, thanks for coming all this way, Brian.
4 trains yesterday. 4 trains, 5 bottles of white wine. I'm still here to tell the tale.
So there's a bottle of wine per train and one for the road.
They did tell me that the hoylake red wine is not as strong as the white wine, but I never listened to anybody. I guess I'm going to listen to you, Tony.
Yeah, if only you'd had the red wine, you'd have been absolutely fine last night.
Right.
And I think somebody spiked him as well. I think somebody spiked the 5th bottle.
Yeah, but in that case, I'm going to be very boring this morning and very reflective. And I'm going to tell you all about things that we don't really want to know. Do you want to know about Dover or Folkestone? No. Over to you, Toby.
Well, I suppose we start with I mean, you're only in 2 episodes of The Robots of Death, but it's a memorable appearance. You're looking...
they kind of used to say that to him.
Yeah, he's a good character.
Would you like to be my agent?
Yeah, well, yes. Yes, I would. The amount of stuff the amount of repeat fees you probably get, I can retire on, I should think.
But the thing is, you keep changing agents, and then they don't know where you are, and they send the repeat fees to you and not to your agent, so you save 10%. There's a clue there for you. If you want to be an actor, keep changing agents.
My agent was in a Doctor Who story called The Mind Robber, but he's the Toby Robber at the moment. It's 15%. Well, anyway, we won't go into that. He won't be appearing at the Hillborough. And actually, if he did, I'd take 15% of his fee, I think.
Apparently, he's in the boot of somebody's car outside, yes.
Yeah, but he's only taking up 15% of it. Plus an extra 17.5% that he doesn't tell you about.
Thought of double act.
Well, the reason I mentioned you to Erica was because we met for an interview for my podcast at St Pancras Station, didn't we?
We did. The wonderful St Pancras Station in London, and that was white wine again.
It was.
It was you.
It was.
He got me on the white wine.
But I think you'd already been in London. You'd already been done an interview for a book about the Sweeney, I think, and I think that had taken place in a pub. I don't think it was the first white wine you'd had that day.
Maybe not. I mean, because let's talk about white wine. I wasn't in the Sweeney.
Callan then. Callan.
Callan, yeah.
I think you'd
Russell Hunter again.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, the lovely Russell. He's a lovely man. Bless him. Bless
It's
him.
a good part, because in Robots of Death, he's sort of playing the sort of part he didn't usually get cast as. I think he must have had a call.
No, he was playing the leader as opposed to the lead. He's usually, not lead, as in heavy. He was... the thing is, you're going to ask me, do you remember when you put those trousers on in EastEnders in June 1976, and you said and you'll mention somebody, and I'll go, it wasn't me. You know, because we can't remember.
Well, of course, everybody here knows you weren't in EastEnders in 1976, but certainly not June.
They don't watch it, they don't watch reality. You're all fantasists. It's a room of fantasists.
Yeah, what's the collective noun for a dream of fantasists? Well, actually, you described Tom Baker, so it's not a memory then, it's more of an opinion. Described Tom Baker as a creative terrorist, which I think is a good description.
That's true. I mean, Tom and I got on very well. We're a couple of Well, we're nice chaps, really, but Tom doesn't give up about most things, and nor do I, because it gives you a headache, really, you know, if you think too much about everything and then have too many opinions. And Tom, well, he liked white wine. Well, I remember travelling on the tube with Tom back from a rehearsal, and it was a wonderful experience. Nobody came up to us and said, "You're Tom Baker," and you're... Anyway, but it was a great journey. I remember, yeah. But Tom, he's a creative terrorist, and I don't think he does enough these days. You know, I don't know where his agent is, because he should be playing lots of parts.
I don't think he can be bothered.
Well, yeah, that's right. We can't be bothered. Too much white wine.
Yeah. So when did you discover the joys of white wine? Was it at the BBC?
Well, because I was quite flatulent on beer, so I thought I'm going to have to choke. So I went, no, it's true, darling.
You won't find this out on the DVDs.
No. This is all, you know, this is all, yeah. Anyway.
So did Robots of Death lead to Blake 7? Because it was written by Chris Boucher, who was obviously heavily involved in Blake 7.
No, it didn't actually, Toby. I think, well, Chris may have spoken to David Maloney, who was the producer at the time. But I did a wonderful series with Tom Bell, the late Tom Bell, a good friend of mine. And I was in that for about 6 episodes. I was in that for five of the 6. And they'd seen me, Maloney had seen me in that, and when Stephen decided to move on to radio, there you get that one. No, when Stephen decided to move on and not to do the next series, they were looking for another Travis, and so Maloney called me in and we had a chat, and I said, if you don't give me this part, I'll knock you out, and you know, there we go. No.
It's a good way of auditioning for that.
I know. You should try it, Toby.
I don't think I'd get away with that. I think
Show us your right hand. Show us your right hand. Then show us your face. No. Wrong face.
I told you.
No, very nice.
I have to sleep with them.
Yeah. Now, a friend of mine said, all this violence, you get on the telly. He says, it's all wrong, because they all go smash, and then they stand there and they look at the person they smash, or they stab them and they look at the blood, or they shoot them and they go ha 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 ha. He said, the thing to do is, if it comes to you, you have to stab someone. You have to go stab and then walk. Otherwise, you know, you'll be seen by as many. If you're standing there going, I stabbed you, I stabbed him, didn't I? You've got all these people who witness it. So nobody ever does violence on the telly quite right.
So if you're going to stab someone, now you know what to do.
Don't all stab someone at the same time, because the police force in Liverpool, they've got enough to do.
So, moving on. Taking over for someone in Blake 7, was it? I mean, did you look at what Stephen had done, or did you consciously not?
I don't think I consciously looked at Stephen's work. Bless him, I was with him last week in London at another jolly like this. I don't think it matters if you look or you don't look, Toby, really. Because this is a room of individuals. You're all individuals. There is only one of you. There's only one of me that created Travis. There was only one of Stephen. I couldn't create what Stephen did. It's like there's a general pattern and we put our specific patterns on it. And it's not difficult. I mean, there's how many James Bonds, how many Tarzans, we were talking about this last night. You know, you just put your stamp on it, and if the director or the producer says, no, don't do it like that, then you stop and you do it a different way, you know. So, yeah.
And do you like this stuff? Do you like the Blake Seven and Doctor Who and the sci-fi? Can you see the appeal? Can you understand why people gather in pubs on a Saturday to meet the people from them?
Well, you know, you're all escapists. You don't like reality. You don't like politics. You don't like religion. You don't like your husband or your wife. You don't like the bloke sitting opposite you on the train. You know, you don't like. So what you do is switch on the telly and put a CD in, and you see me, and you go, I don't like that actor. No, I mean, it's an escape, isn't it? It's a wonderful escape. And I've always said, and you, as a creative and a performer, you know that the writers, whatever it is, they're the people, not us, not the performers. The writers who dream this up, whether it be a soap or a sci-fi or whatever, you know, they're the people. And this is, you have to, and in the end, if you get asked to do something, you know, you might be a corporate, it might be a radio, it might be a sci-fi series, you go and do it because you're a performer, and that's the name of the game, whether you like it or not. And it's like when you're being interviewed with somebody, if you don't like them, you have to make out they're lovely. But when you're working with somebody, you have to find a way to like them, unless it's, you know, that, well, whatever your predilection is, and if they're sitting opposite you, it's easy. But if it's somebody that you don't like and they've got bad breath or they're giving you the wrong cue, you have to find a way to like them, and you have to find a way to like the job. You have to like the genre, whatever. Do we call it a genre? Sci-fi genre?
Yeah.
I'd have a sci-fi genre, please. Not too much ice.
So all right, then what have been the jobs that have been the hardest to like to like then? Which ones did, because you've done so much?
Well, I think it, and I keep passing it back to you, because I think it's when the work that's done before the performer arrives is not done correctly, albeit the writing, the casting, and the pre-production directing. Because, look at it this way, we start with an idea that a writer might bring to a producer, and the producer says, great idea, go away and do it. So the writer goes away and writes it, comes back, and the producer says, great, now we've got to find a director. So they find a director that's suitable, and the director says, wait a minute, I've got to find a casting director. They find a casting director who can cast the piece, and then they get all these actors in for the one part. You know, you line up. No, and then you go in and you compete with all these other actors. We know that, but then you get the job. So when it comes to you, it's like five or six things down the line. So if it's not been prepared correctly, answering the question, they're the jobs that I don't like. I worked with, my God, he was a great director, but I can't remember his name. No, he did directed Get Carter. Mike Hodges. Now Mike Hodges, thank you. I told you to sit on the front row, didn't I? I need some, yeah. Mike Hodges, great director, great film director. Excuse me. He had his cameraman he'd worked with for a long time. They were both, getting on a bit, so they were both there. And I could see I was in safe hands. And we did a scene, and Mike didn't say anything, and then at the end of the scene he said, could you walk a little bit faster? And that's all he said, because it had been prepared and he'd cast it correctly. All he needed to say was walk a bit faster, not this is how you play the part. I want to tell you a story. I want to tell you a story. I was telling I'm not sure if it was Alan's or Erica's dad in the car. Oh, you were in the
You're telling
car.
me as well, but that's fine. They weren't here.
They weren't.
Yeah.
It's a good story.
Yeah.
No, this is not a sci-fi story. This is a soap story. I'm sorry about that. But I turned up on the EastEnders set one day at lunchtime and bumped into Wendy Richards, the wonderful Wendy, and she didn't have a dog with her. He was in the dressing room. She was breaking all. She's like Tom Baker, breaks all the rules. Anyway, she said to me, "Here, Bri," she said, "have you worked with this young director, this new young director we've got today?" I said, "No, I've only arrived lunchtime." She said, "Here," she said, "do you know what he said to me? He said, I think what you're thinking in this scene," she said, I said to him, hold on a minute, I've been doing this show now for 25 years without a thought in my head. Don't you start putting money in my mouth. I carry that story, I think it's wonderful.
Well, you were working all the time on British TV, so it must have been quite an exciting time when you were, doing all sorts of different
When I was a
things.
young man, go on, spit it out.
Well, when they made drama on television, remember those days?
Yeah.
But so I, imagine it was just, pretty consistent work all the time.
Well, it's like stepping out of one car and getting into another, really. It was, I suppose, what do they call it, the golden age of television? There was lots going on, lots of drama, and my wife says to me, she says, my wife says to me, no, she says, please find us some drama. And you put the channel thing and it comes up and you go 9 o'clock. And it's hard pressed to find drama these days. It really is, and you're all nodding. And that's what we all like. What are those, TV people, programmers doing? I saw one the other night, which a Scottish drama called Stonemouth, an adaptation of an Ian Banks book. He's a futuristic writer that you all might like. And that was rather good, but I was lucky to find it. But nowadays, back then, there was a pub by the BBC rehearsal rooms in East Acton, where you turn up, you'd be in Studio 6 or 7 or whatever, and then you break for lunch and you go and have your ploughmans and pint or whatever, and there'd be someone you hadn't seen for ages, and there's someone else that you hadn't seen for ages, it was, but nowadays it's called progress. Some of us progress with a minus, and some say progress with a plus, but it's all changed. Even the fees. I was talking to your lovely lady this morning, and apparently, you don't want to know this, but EastEnders are on a weekly fee, whereas years ago you were paid per programme. They don't look after actors. We're not, as you say, the golden age of television, we're not in work and then out of work and then in work. Sometimes time goes by and it's hard, very hard to make a living as middle of the strata actor. And that's why a lot of kids are not doing it, because they can't afford the training and they can't afford to be out of pocket, You're falling asleep.
No, I was acknowledging we've got 20 minutes to go.
No.
So, so you talk about kids and getting into acting. So what was your journey? How did you become an actor?
Well, I'm going to expose myself now. A bit earlier in the day. I was a delinquent. I wasn't a bad delinquent. You see, years ago, they could put you in prison for 6 months for driving whilst disqualified. I couldn't afford a licence, I don't think, I can't remember, but all the insurers, but they put me away for 6 months. But now they haven't got the room, because it's all time, that's progress again. Time has moved on, history. It's all drug related. Everybody in prison is either, taking drugs, buying drugs, selling drugs, whatever, and they're in prison. There's no room for driving whilst it's at D&D. No, that's drunk and drive winemaking.
Yeah.
Keep going around. Anyway, I came out of there after 4 months. I was a good boy there. I did throw a potato at one chap, and no, I did. It was the day before I was going, and they all went, "Oh, leave him alone." So I said, "Come here, come here." So you threw that potato at Tony, didn't you? I said, "Yeah, I did." It's funny, wasn't it? He went, "No." He said, "If it was at the beginning of your sentence, you'd be up in front of the governor. But I'm going to let you off." I went, "Oh, thank you." I didn't have a fine, no, you're not allowed money in prison. But anyway, so I came out of there, and I thought, well, I don't really want to go back in there, because there weren't many Doctor Who or Blake Seven people in there. Nice people. They were all a bit. Yeah, I remember one time, from Sheffield, yeah, no. Anyway, okay, and I went to evening classes because of a friend of mine. Well, when you're young, the opposite sex, or the same sex, you know, you think, I want to go and meet someone. So it wasn't because I like drama, because they told me that there's, you know, you don't have to go, because I'm not a very good dancer, you see. You know, you go to the Tottenham Royal or the Lyceum, and, you know, other people get up and they dance, you know, with girls, and they were doing the rumba and the salsa and the twist. We did the twist, yeah. And so I thought, well, if not only will I just get to meet them in rehearsals, I'll get to play opposite them and say, "Hello, darling, I love you, and I've always wanted you to have my baby." So that's what I did, and from there it sort of caught on, and I met a guy there who was a stage manager at the, you know, the Players Theatre in London. They do old-time musical. I met the guy who ran it. It was his son, and he was going on holiday. He said, "Do you want to take over my shift backstage at the pantomime?" And I said, "Backstage at the pantomime? Yes. There'd be nobody behind you, would you? Because you'd be behind them, wouldn't you? Yeah, you couldn't, that wouldn't come into it." So, but it was a very small stage, I remember. It's a very long story, this one. And I remember going along there, and I hadn't done any stage management, but because it was a small stage, and there were like things that revolve, a square one, a diamond one and a round one, and they had to go at certain times so that they'd all fit in, like scene change 2, hold it Brian, hold it Brian, now, and the round one would go, and then your square one would sort of do that. But I was a bit, because I didn't want to upset anybody, I wanted to do the job, I was a bit previous, and I remember I locked it all up. I had to bring the curtain down and everything. You know, stop the show. I was a showstopper. Yeah. Anyway, so I did that, and I met some guys there, and they were on a stage management course, and I thought, well, I could do that. You know, I could be a grip. I could be a grip. You know, I could carry a camera on my shoulder, tripod, a lot. Yeah, even carry a van. So I thought, well, I'll go and do a stage management course. They told me about this, and I went to do a stage management course, but you have to go into classes with the actors. And I was in classes with Brian Cox, who's not quite a sir yet, Martin Shaw.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah, Martin Shaw. You know Martin Shaw? He's a vegetarian, and if you're on a show with him, he makes everybody eat vegetarian. There's nothing wrong with that, but you know, there was Mussolini, there was Hitler. Anyway. But I thought, yeah, I could do that, because I used to watch them. Because as stage management, the first few weeks, there's nothing for you to stage manage, because there's been no shows being rehearsed, etc. So, and I sat there and I thought, yeah, I could do that. I could convince people. I've convinced you, haven't I? This is all true. It didn't happen, it happened to my mate. I've copied it all. He said, this is what you have to say. Anyway, and so then I had an audition, transferred to the acting course, and that's my story. Toby.
Very good. Very good. Well, I think we should throw it open to the rest of you to ask what questions you would like to ask. Right, we've barely mentioned Doctor Who so far in the interview. So if hands go in the air, if anybody has any questions, and we'll take it from you. If not, I will carry on asking him questions about all sorts of other things. Ah, there's a gentleman at the back.
Sensing robots are definitely one of the really great things about it, the design. From a distance on the screen, it looks sensational. Obviously, there's a history of BBC Doctor Who being on the cheap back in those days. What was it like up close? Did things come off in your hand, or was it as solid as it looks?
He's complimenting the sets and saying that Doctor Who has a reputation for being cheap. So
He wasn't looking at the actors then.
Upstage by flat, I'm afraid.
There were
right?
two wonderful, beautiful women on that stage, on that set. You know, the wonderful Pamela and
Louise James.
oh yeah, the lovely Louise. But
Oh, Tanya Rogers.
Tanya, yeah. Nobody knows where Tanya's gone.
No.
That's cute for a song. Nobody knows where Tanya's gone. Yeah, the set. I didn't look at it. I'm sorry, I can't give you a long answer to that. I think the seats were comfortable. I was sitting down a lot. You have to look at the other actors. You don't look at the scenery. Because if I was acting with Toby and I was looking there, you know, Toby said, "Can you look at me, please?" Sorry, Toby. Yeah, you know. So it's a good question, but I think somebody else could answer that one. I can't give you a more informed answer than. Well, other than that, most of the sets. I'll give you an example. Most of the sets are like that. You know, we've all seen Flash Gordon, haven't we? That was a precursor to Blake Seven and Doctor Who, when the spaceship used to go like that, where anybody got on board. But I did a program. Had a part in a program called Softly Softly, and that was many years ago. Some of the older faction. Put your hands up, yeah. You may, yeah, they remember, yeah. Softly Softly with Barlow and Frank Windsor and Norman Bowler, who did a big thing in Emmerdale for a while, I believe. Anyway, what happens back in the old days? You would you rehearse, and then you go into the studio, and you'd rehearse it for the cameras on the studio floor in the daytime, and then from 7 till 10, we would record, and they would record scene after scene. They go, the scene in the bar next, then the scene in that corner over there next, scene with Toby next, whatever. And so my scene was Frank Windsor interviewing me in a pub, and the whole episode was about taking a very heavy-duty prisoner with police escort from one prison to another. And Norman had to get up, and it was like, well, you know what, we like one page of dialogue where Toby says yes, and I go no, and he goes maybe, and I go what? And he goes when? And I go tomorrow, and we like, but Norman had 2 or 3 pages of, and then car number 1 pulls into front of him, and then the van pulls up, and we bring out John Smith, and John Smith is then taken with Joe Smith and Detective Constable Tom Jones, and then the second guy. It went on for ages, but my scene was next, and I'm looking around the pub. This is a modern pub. You remember pubs used to have like a little thing at the top. They used to put Toby jugs and all sorts of things. Someone's nodding, somebody knows. My mate from last night. And so what they do, they say, could you get in the scene because the lights are down there. The lights